Boris, thanks so much.
April Ryan, CNN political analyst and White House correspondent for American Urban Radio Networks, with us now, as well as former U.S. Attorney for the Middle District of Georgia, Michael Moore, and counterterrorism expert analyst Phil Med. We also have with us. So thank you, everybody, for being here. I appreciate it. I want to touch on something that the president said when he was talking about the fact, and he was asked if they were concerned about what might happen with special counsel Mueller and Flynn, and he said, no, I'm not at all worried. There was no collusion. If there is nothing for the White House to fear, April Ryan, why would Flynn enter into, and we do know it was a plea agreement with the special counsel. What does he have to contribute?
Right. Well, let's take a couple steps back. Remember, a few weeks ago, Sarah Huckabee Sanders said that they had heard that the Mueller investigation was coming to an end. That is truly not the case, it looks like. And she backpedaled that day. Well, the next day she backpedaled, saying, you know, we're hopeful. So their hopes have been dashed. When I talked to a Republican source who's very familiar with the legalities of cases like this, as well as close to the administration, says when there is a plea deal, they said there is going to be someone that Flynn could be giving up that's higher than his ranking. And the source said there are 3 people that he could be giving up. And that could be Kushner, that could be Bannon, and that could be Donald Trump Jr. So now the question is, what does that plea deal look like? Who would be that person? This is not a slam dunk for the president. The president is trying to continue a winning phase, that everything is okay, but it's not okay. The question is, what is that plea deal going to look like, and who will be brought into the scope of this plea deal?
Michael, expectation is that on one hand, Flynn may be trying to protect his son, Michael Flynn Jr., but at the same time, when you look at the fact that he has testified that Kushner is the one who directed him to talk to or to have contact with the Russians, a lot of people look at that and say, why does Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, still have security clearance based on everything that has happened over the last 4 or 5 months?
Well, I mean, I think that's a good question, and likely he should not have security clearance, especially given the ongoing investigation and his repeated calls back to testify about things that he omitted from his security clearance form. I think what you've got to look at is, in the whole context of this, is about Mike Flynn's plea deal. And typically there's a theory that the better the deal, the bigger the fish. And it tells me, when I look at it, that very likely there's somebody up the line, and Bob Mueller's already got Mike Flynn's information in sworn testimony, either before a grand jury, a recorded testimony, on the record testimony, and he's got the information he needs to move forward. For much, remember that Donald Trump has called this a witch hunt. And really what we know from the plea agreement at this point is that it's no longer a witch hunt, but in fact Mike Flynn's going to tell us about a coven of witches that were located somewhere in the Trump transition office. So, you know, I think this is going to move on up the ladder, and I'm guessing that's why the White House administration is scared, and why the tax deal seemed to be the way that the president wanted to talk during his press avail there.
I mean, in the president's defense, this is what he ran on, this tax deal. Phil, before we get to that, I want to get to that in a minute, but I want to listen with you to Lieutenant General Hertling here and what he said in response to what we watched here in the last 24 hours with Michael Flynn.
He went against the Constitution of the United States. General officers, soldiers are held to a higher standards. We are taught throughout our career to honor the values of things like duty, honor country, integrity, respect, loyalty, selfless service. And America expects that of its general officer ranks, because they give their sons and daughters to defend the country. So when you have an individual who lies, who serves one individual as opposed to the Constitution of the country, it just truthfully makes me a little bit furious.
Phil, what's your reaction to that?
Boy, I'm struggling to contain myself. What you're seeing here is a conversation. I think Michael just captured it brilliantly about what's going on the legal side. That's not why I bristle as a former intelligence officer and member of the executive branch of government. I go back to the campaign when a former serving general in the U.S. military got in front of an audience and said that a political opponent should be locked up. That's what third world countries do. Michael Flynn should be ashamed not just for lying to a federal officer back in January, but we need to hear an apology for getting on the campaign trail in the American democratic experiment and saying that a rival candidate, whether you like her or not, should be locked up. That was shameful. No intelligence officer, no military officer should